We all feel them. The forbidden, the sinful, the taboo. Behaviors that divide cultures and inspire fear. But our differences may be what make us all human.
Every religion requires followers to accept a framework of belief.
I believe in the Quran, and I think what the Quran said is always right.
Doesn't mean if you pray every day that you're the best person.
I believe when you help somebody, God helping you.
But some interpretations of faith demand far more than devotion. They transcend the limits of mainstream religion in graphic, even dangerous ways. What some communities see as a test of faith, outsiders may call taboo. In this hour, take a terrifying plunge with islanders in the South Pacific who risk their own children's lives for their faith. Reenact an ancient miracle in Greece by walking barefoot across fiery coals. Meet a man who thanks God for saving his wife and child by crucifying himself every year. And wonder, how far would you go to prove your faith? The tiny South Pacific island of Pentecost is home to what may be the most dangerous test of faith in the world. Many people here hold animistic beliefs tied to the bounty of the rainforest. Every year, village elders organize a ritual designed to secure the gods' favor. In a spectacular and frightening display called land diving, young men and boys, some just 5 years old, literally risk their necks. Only 2 fragile vines save them from crashing into the ground. It's the ancient precursor of bungee jumping. But here, it's considered a sacrifice for the survival of the community.
Risking death, I think, is probably as old a practice as humanity itself.
Christopher Davis is an anthropologist at the School of Oriental and Asian Studies in London.
One of the many things that distinguishes human beings from animals is this capacity to risk death or loss of life or disability in order to perpetuate life in the future over the next year or 2 or 3 years.
Here on the island, Chief Willie Orion Bebe presides over his village's ceremony.
When they climb on a tower, they have no fear because it's their culture. The man's faith helped him to put the fear out, and then he must jump. He must take an action to jump.
By some estimates, land diving dates back 15 centuries. Its exact origin is obscure, but it is tied to the local religion of animism. People here believe in a world of spirits that demands offerings. Originally, divers would perform just after the yam harvest to thank the gods and to assure another fruitful crop. According to tradition, the jumper's shoulders should graze the ground and fertilize the soil for the next planting. When Pentecost Island was colonized by Britain and France in the 19th century, Christian missionaries tried to ban the practice. But to people here, risking lives is understandable when the community's very survival is at stake.
A practice like this would happen around harvest time because, after all, this is the most critical moment.
Canadian anthropologist Wade Davis is a National Geographic explorer in residence.
Don't forget that in pre-industrial society, harvest was not a done deal. I mean, for example, in the high Andes of Peru, during the time of the Inca, it was absolutely common for roughly 25% of the crop to be wiped out by hail or by frost. And whether your food came in or not determined literally whether you're going to live the next year.
The village of Wale is one of several on the island that holds land diving rituals every April and May. Willie Warren supervises the tower's construction. It's a skill he hopes to pass on to his 7-year-old son, Philip.
I built the tower when my father is still alive. When my father died, and I took his place.
At home, the next generation is eager to follow in his father's footsteps. Twice Philip has leapt from his father's towers, but only after a gentle push. This year, he's determined to jump on his own. The test of faith begins well before jump day. Each man must find and harvest his own vines. With the gods watching, the choice can mean the difference between life and death. At least one man has died when his brittle vines snapped. He fell to the ground and broke his back.
The whole point is to have death be just right on the periphery, but somehow not get you, and that's a proof of your virtue.
Under Willie Warren's direction, they lashed together nearly 1,000 logs, without a single nail, an inch of wire, or even a measuring tape. Willie will have the honor of jumping from the very top, around 24 meters, or 80 feet. For their most crucial decision, where to cut their vines, they rely on sight alone. Too long, and they risk slamming into the ground and breaking their necks. They make their choices carefully. Coming up, young Philip faces his test of faith. Whatever happens, will he survive? And later, Greek Orthodox worshippers challenge a church taboo by risking their flesh on a bed of fire. And a Filipino man thanks God for divine intervention by enduring unbelievable pain. On Pentecost Island in the South Pacific, the land diving towers are complete. By jump day, 9 men have volunteered to dive. Women are not allowed to jump. As the youngest, 7-year-old Philip Warren will go first. His fate is now up to the gods. There's no doctor standing by. People here believe the risk will help Philip learn to be a man.
Clearly, in this case of the jumping, you are doing two things. You're making a gesture to the field, a gesture to your harvest, and of course you're also doing this moment where you're bringing a young lad not only into manhood, but into manhood in an event which is absolutely essential to the well-being of the society, which is the harvest.
Boys can make their first jump as soon as they are circumcised, sometimes as young as 5. 7 meters or 25 feet up, Philip balances on a platform just wide enough for his feet. Some fathers might ban a child from such a jump. Willie is prepared to give Philip a push if he needs it. The moment of truth has arrived. He could break his neck. He is rattled, but unhurt. And he has made his father very happy. With each dive, the tower and platform seem to grow less sturdy. And there's also the danger of tying on tangled vines. Even if all goes well, the jolt at the bottom is enough to pull bones from their sockets. A diver must come prepared, or he will pay the price.
And if you don't have all these things in your brain and heart, that means everything you want to do for the tower, you cannot do it. Because you will get injury or anything can happen to you.
This is what religion is, really. It's about giving up your own belief and giving it over to something that's greater than yourself.
Yvonne Chereau is a religion professor at Swarthmore College in the U.S.
That's the object of a lot of the tests. My life is not my own, okay? And my life is given over to this power or this force that is greater than me. There are little tests and there are big tests.
A vine breaks. But this diver is lucky. In the past, a snapped vine resulted in a fractured hip. Others have broken collarbones. The last jumpers have chosen platforms a dizzying 7 stories above the ground. The long vines, which took a decade to grow, are like 100-pound shackles. Traditionally, islanders believed that the higher the jump, the greater the blessing. Men brave enough to dive from the top secured a good yam crop and the prosperity of the community. Philip's father, Willie Warren, is one of their best land divers. He gets a raucous welcome. Willie must jump out as far as he can to avoid impaling himself on the tower's rough logs. He urges on the singers, summoning support. Willie proves why he is a land dive champion. He's strong enough to spring back on his feet, an accomplishment few can match. It's a performance worthy of the gods. While the people of Pentecost Island need no longer fear famine if their yam harvests fail, they still treasure their tradition of land diving. It remains a personal test of strength, bravery, and faith. Some might see risking harm as an extreme way to win favor from the gods. But dangerous tests also reinforce a believer's own faith.
Why are miracles so important? Because they're like the stunning billboard proclaiming the reality of the faith. You know, if you don't have miracles, if you don't have gestures of faith like that, the faith becomes more tenuous, or can become more tenuous. And when we say we want to demonstrate our faith, at some level, it's a sincere gesture of showing your commitment to a belief system.
But some belief systems conflict with the rules of organized religion. What would you do if your most profound spiritual experience was declared taboo by the leaders of your faith? In northern Greece, an annual spring festival is underway. Greek Orthodox priests lead a homage to St. Constantine, who brought Christianity to the Roman Empire. But when the Orthodox ceremony is over, another begins. One the church calls pagan and sacrilegious. In a 1,000-year-old ritual, practitioners will test their faith in a walk through fire.
Some of these demonstrations of faith are practiced cross-culturally. A classic example would be walking on fire. You have Greek Orthodox practitioners doing it in the Mediterranean. You have Japanese Buddhist immigrants doing it in Sao Paulo and in Brazil. You have it going on throughout Southeast Asia, but you have this practice that is all around the world.
For much of the year, St. Helen is a tranquil place of just 700 people. Like 54-year-old Kyriakos Patsos, most feel blessed to live here. Kyriakos is the chief icon bearer in a fire-walking festival called the Anestenaria. The ritual revolves around a set of ancient icons that worshippers believe have special powers to heal and protect. One story claims that 1,000 years ago, worshippers rescued the icons from a burning church, escaping miraculously unscathed. Ever since, their descendants have carried the icons into the fire to prove their faith and to seek blessings from St. Constantine. But others view the ritual as sacrilege, the fire walking itself, and risking the holy icons.
People who oppose the tradition dislike the fact that we take the icons along in the fire. That's why they claim the tradition is pagan.
Kyriakos has fire-walked most of his life. To others, faith came late, in a time of need. Sotirios Panayotou long admired the firewalkers, but never expected to do it himself, until he nearly lost his life. Years of sanding and painting cars in his auto body shop exposed him to fumes that damaged his heart. He couldn't afford a filtration system.
Το ξέραμε από την πρώτη στιγμή, αλλά τα οικονομικά δεν μπορούσαμε να πάρουμε το εργαλείο αυτό, γιατί στοιχίζει πολλά λεφτά.
We couldn't do anything about it because of money issues, because this piece of equipment cost a lot of money, so we would always wait.
Συνέτερο να μπορέσουμε να πάρουμε αυτό το εργαλείο. Ώσπου έφτασε η στιγμή, περίπου το 82, και αγοράσαμε αυτό το εργαλείο και καλυτέρευσαμε τη δουλειά μας.
Then, one day at work, he suffered a heart attack. He underwent an emergency double bypass operation and a valve implant. He was only 41 years old. His wife lit candles in church, asking St. Constantine to spare his life. During his recovery, he attended the Anestinaria ritual and felt a calling.
Πήγα κοντά εκεί, άναψα το κερί μου, χαιρέτησα.
I went there and I lit a candle, and while the firewalking was happening, I felt the power to take off my shoes, and I joined the rest.
Έβγαλα τα παπούτσια και πήγα κι εγώ μαζί με τους άλλους. Δοκίμαζα, δεν ξέρω.
Was I being tested? I don't know. I was testing myself because I felt that I had the strength, which I did.
Και όπως και το έκανα.
The one thing you can't do is think your way into faith. Faith is like something that envelops you. And once you have faith, it's absolute in some sense.
But to the Metropolitan Bishop of Langados, the Anestinaria ritual is pagan, a hangover from ancient times when people worshipped the sun and the moon. He believes Anestinarians are betraying St. Constantine.
In this lifetime, he would give them a slap in the face. St. Constantine is a saint, and to think and act that way is an insult.
The bishop believes Anestinarians risk excommunication in this life and damnation in the next. He refuses to give them communion.
It's very common for there to be a local variation on religious practice that's not favored by the Orthodox. So you certainly see it with Buddhism, with Islam, as well as with Christianity, where people locally are doing things that the Orthodox would think were entirely inappropriate.
As sunset approaches, worshippers build a bonfire. Inside the shrine, the final ceremony begins, as always, with ancient folk songs played on the lyre. It's powerful music that touches the hearts and moves the emotions of the believers. Dancing is a form of confession, and it brings its share of anguish. The 72-year-old Iro Hajantoniou is overcome with the weight of her sins. Iro, who lives in Athens, has attended the Anestinaria every year since 1968. Tonight will be a stiff test of her faith. Kyriakos takes up the sacred icon. The saint and their faith in him is the only protection the Anestinarians will take into the fire. While the Orthodox Church might disapprove of what they're about to do, Anestinarians see firewalking as a way to win blessings from St. Constantine.
The priest's job is to secure the individual to the yoke of the faith, to the yoke of the collective in a hierarchical society. So any religious practice that allows the individual human being to have direct access to the divine is profoundly subversive and intimidating and threatening to organized religion.
A breeze has fanned the coals into a bright cauldron of burning embers. Coming up, the fire beckons. But one believer's faith is faltering. And later, a Christian in the Philippines braces himself for the ordeal that killed Jesus Christ. In northern Greece, the fire has burned down to embers. As bearer of the holy icon, Kyriakos must lead the way. He traverses the hot coals, first from north to south, then a second pass, east to west. His steps form a cross, and he appears to feel no pain.
One of the fascinating things is that walking on coals became kind of a fad in California, and an awful lot of hippies burn their toes. If you simply try to walk on the coals, you'll burn your feet terribly. But if you participate in a ritual that creates a certain energy in the group and elevates your spirit, you'll suddenly find yourself being able to walk across those coals without feeling pain.
One by one, the followers of the saint take the plunge. Soterius, the mechanic, follows Kyriakos in.
I also take strength when Kyriakos goes into the fire first. I don't have the strength yet to go first. Maybe slowly I will make it.
Not everyone can take that first step. 72-year-old Ero stands frozen before the fire. Her eyesight is weak. Her faith is faltering. Others warn her not to cross. Doubt and hesitation, they say, can lead to serious injury.
You cannot persuade anyone to enter the fire. If someone isn't ready, they cannot do it.
For the weak of heart, time is running out. The fire is dying.
I didn't think I would do it. I said my prayers, but they didn't help. My eyesight is so poor these days, so my son led me across. I helped him years ago. He helps me today.
Ero has completed her test of faith. The ceremony continues until the embers are almost stamped out. Kyriakos and Soterius are elated. Faith brought them through.
I feel so joyful. The saints were with us.
I do feel this was a test of my faith, a test that we passed. We have faith, and so the icons of Saints Constantine and Helen helped us walk through the fire without getting burned. We came out all right.
Many in the crowd are skeptical. Some wonder if they too might be capable of walking through fire. And in fact, science has offered possible explanations for fire walking. One is that perspiration forms a buffer of vapor between skin and coal.
Science may be a very powerful way of explaining what happens, but it's not necessarily the only way, or even in many instances the most interesting way or the most fun way to explain things. The science explains how it can be done. Faith explains why you should be able to do it.
Back at the shrine, the faithful need no further explanation. Soterius is convinced that his faith and his readiness to test it has prolonged his life and given him time with the grandson he might never have seen. For Kyriakos, there's a sense of duty done. He believes they have secured the blessing of St. Constantine for another year. In the face of official condemnation, faith can become an intensely personal experience. In many religions, some believers even make their own pacts with God. When the stakes are high, some will pledge almost anything in exchange for divine blessings. How much pain and suffering would you endure if you believed it could save a loved one? The Philippines. A country of 75 million people, the vast majority Catholic. Signs of faith are everywhere, especially during Easter week, which commemorates the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus Christ.
It could be argued that the key moment of Catholicism, the moment that defines the faith, is when Jesus sacrifices himself.
Hilary Crane is an anthropologist at Tufts University in the U.S.
He, on the cross, suffers for the sins of all humanity. And his willingness to take on the pain of other people is what allows him to be called the Savior.
At Easter time, most Catholic traditions honor the resurrection of Jesus Christ rather than his crucifixion. But some Filipinos focus more on the suffering and death. In the village of San Pedro Catud, Holy Week means more than praying and going to Mass.
Whenever Holy Week comes, I have difficulty sleeping at night.
Rolando Ocampo is a local carpenter who has made an oath to God.
As Holy Week approaches, I am reminded of the promise that I have to fulfill on Good Friday. I'm really reminded of the difficult task that I have to do for the Lord because He heard my prayer to save my wife and daughter.
12 years ago, Rolando's wife was giving birth to their youngest daughter, Cindy. There were complications. Both hovered near death.
When she came out of the womb, my daughter only cried after 30 minutes, and my wife was turning blue. So I asked the Lord for His help during the delivery. I told the Lord that if my wife would have a safe delivery, I would have myself crucified on Good Friday.
Rolando believes his prayers were answered. Both recovered, and today his daughter is a Star Trek athlete. Every year, Rolando pays for this blessing with his own flesh and blood, through self-flagellation and crucifixion.
Ganitong ginawa ko dahil ito tinatawag nilang bike wire na yung ginagamit sa bakod, pambakod.
I use what you call barbed wire for my crown of thorns. I use this material because it's durable and won't break easily.
Itong pako nito.
These are the kinds of nails I use. These are the nails that are driven into my hands.
Despite his reasons, many would find his form of sacrifice horrifying.
If a person who crucifies himself sees what they're doing as giving their suffering and their pain to God because God did this for them, it makes sense. The question is, how far can that go? Does one sacrifice a child to God? Because it's religion, you're in this sort of gray area. Because suffering plays such an important role in some traditions.
Rolando promised God he would crucify himself 15 times. This is his 12th year. 3 more and his promise to God will be fulfilled. Rolando is not alone in his tests of faith. 15 others are expected to be crucified this Holy Week. And hundreds more will do penance in a variety of painful ways. In the past, other Catholic cultures have embraced physical suffering as a means of penance. But today, the Catholic Church does not condone these practices. Still, Father Montores is a local priest who sees them as integral to Filipino culture. For him, the Holy Week practices reflect the colonial persecution Filipinos endured over the years.
The Filipino has a very deep sense of suffering. And crucifixion, flagellation, and different forms of self-inflicted pain during Holy Week is, I think, but an expression of the Filipinos measuring himself how far he could go.
It is Holy Thursday, the day people here begin to atone. This is the first stage of Rolando's trials, self-flagellation.
This is what I use to bleed myself. This is called a barrio. We hold it in our hand and it's made of bamboo. I'm hoping that I'll reach my destination, so I can tell myself that I have fulfilled my promise. If I don't make it, I'll feel that God has forsaken me and that I have many sins.
Rolando wears a head covering so no one can see him cry. He must whip himself while he walks a grueling 24 kilometers from his house to the village church. The pavement is scorching. He stops often to pray and to have his wounds opened. As the hours pass, he loses a lot of blood.
It's really hard as time passes while you're flogging yourself. You could feel each wound that is inflicted by the sharp shard of glass. When it hits you, it really feels as if it's going to go through your chest. But because I made a promise, I have to bear it.
There is power in giving up oneself. One tends to think that you lose power in giving up self. But for the religious person, it's the opposite. You are embracing something that is greater than yourself, and you are giving up self in order to become powerful. And that, to me, is really remarkable.
Suddenly, Rolando senses a familiar presence.
I felt suddenly weak, and I could feel that the person carrying my cross was someone from my family. I don't want my family to suffer. I want to bear all the suffering for my family as long as I can.
Even with her face covered, he recognizes his oldest daughter. She too is atoning by carrying Rolando's cross. For Rolando, it's a devastating sight. Through his penance, he wanted to bear the sins of his entire family. The daughter rushes to help her father and urge him to go on. But it is too late. Emotionally drained and physically exhausted, he returns home. Rolando failed to walk all the way to his church. He believes he is in danger of breaking his promise to God. Rolando hopes he will be stronger tomorrow at the crucifixion. Coming up, Rolando's final duty to God. Will he have the strength to survive it? Friday in the Philippines, one of the most sacred days for Catholics around the world, the day that Jesus was crucified. The village of San Pedro Catud prepares for an estimated 10,000 visitors who will come to watch 15 crucifixions. For Rolando, the chaos is a distraction. He's chosen to be crucified last in hopes of avoiding the crowds.
I'll still be doing it because I'm sincere about getting crucified. That's why I try to avoid people and the press.
As his time approaches, Rolando is silent. Even though he has done this 11 times before, it is a heavy burden. His eyes betray his concern. An hour has passed. With his nails, hammer, crown of thorns, and faith, Rolando heads for the hill. Much of the crowd seems to view his ordeal as a spectacle.
I know they don't have good thoughts about me, but it really doesn't bother me what they think. I made a promise to the Lord and I'm going to fulfill it.
He draws inspiration from his daughter Cindy. He believes God saved her life.
My youngest daughter, she's the most important. Because if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be doing this crucifixion.
Hindi ko gagawin ng ganitong pangapako sa krus.
As he reaches the hill, he feels the presence of Christ.
Ubad ko ng damit.
From the time I undress and I lie on the cross, it's like Christ takes over my body.
Para bang siya na ang nakapasok sa akin.
Every society needs to answer that question of why do people suffer? Why are some people sick and other people not? Why did this car crash and that car not? And that in lots of societies, people who suffer more than others feel particularly inclined to be religious. That can also turn into people needing to suffer more in order to feel more religious.
Each nail must be placed in a precise place. Any deviation could cause permanent paralysis in his hands. The nails go through his hands and into the wood.
My whole body could feel the pain of the nails, the throbbing on my hands. And when I look at the people, I see that many are amused and many are disgusted. Maybe because they're thinking that this is just a show.
Marami ding natutuwa sa akin, marami ding galit sa ginagawa ko. Dahil para sa isip, sa sarili ko, para bang yung ginagawa ko parang pakitang tao lang.
Rolando hopes to atone for yesterday's failure by staying on the cross longer than usual.
Pag nasa itas na ako, nakapako na ako, para ba yung katawan ko nga, sarili ko.
When I'm up there, I feel that Jesus takes over my body, that He has taken my place, and I'm certain that He has forgiven me because the Lord is good. He probably wouldn't abandon me in my suffering.
Natatawad ako, Panginoon, dahil alam ko ang Panginoon kasi mabait, hindi sigurado papabayaan na hindi ako patawaran dahil ganun na ang ginawa ko.
After several minutes of agony, he is lowered. Exhausted, his hands throbbing, he and his daughter return home. It has cost him dearly, but Rolando has kept his promise.
If I was looking at this story, I'd see an incredible gesture of faith, an incredible sense of honor in a man who has lived up to his pledge to God. The world would be a weaker place if you lost the intensity of honor and decency and commitment that that man is displaying.
Rolando's wife is overcome with emotion. Within the hour, his wounds have begun to heal. Only 3 more crucifixions and his debt to the Lord will be repaid.
I could feel that the Lord has heard my prayers because my family and loved ones are no longer having troubles and are kept away from harm.
Hindi na kami masyadong nahihirapan. Sa pangalawa, yung mga magulang ko kapatid, mga anak ko na ninalayo sa disgrasya.
He believes today's success means a brighter future for his family. Many religious practices can be hard for outsiders to fathom. Because they go to extremes, tests of faith can often seem taboo.
Anthropologists would say that you cannot judge religions based on anything, really, that you can't ever say that this religious group is wrong or immoral compared to another one, that they all need to be understood within their own context.
For believers, tests of faith confirm a powerful connection to the divine.
One of the reasons people seek to prove their faith is because gestures of proving faith reinforce our certainty that our faith is not misguided. If you actually can, as people do, walk over burning embers in a religious trance, well, that's going to be a pretty wonderful affirmation of your faith in your beliefs.
To feel that affirmation, some will even disobey the leaders of their religion. Around the world, people use tests of faith to assure a good harvest, to maintain health and livelihood, even to thank God for divine intervention. While their methods and motivations differ, they are all striving for blessings from the eternal. What some see as legitimate religious practices, others condemn as taboo.